Okay, team R171, just like R170, you have 5 rounds on the same exercise, then you move to the next exercise. Again, 5 rounds. First 2 rounds, you're gonna use that to warm up, make sure their form is perfect. It's always about making sure the form is perfect when they first start. Then that gives them 3 more rounds to really push it. Their 4th round should determine what they can do in their 5th round. If they've started compromising their form, they need to go down. If they were able to do it and they didn't compromise their form, they should try a little bit more. If they were able to do it, or and it was pretty easy, then they definitely need to go up. If they just barely got to the end of that 4th round and were able to do it, then that's probably perfect. See if they can't do it for 1 more round. Again, a lot of time under tension, so this is more challenging than people think. Now, they get 20 seconds of rest in between each round and then 35-second transition time, but that's still not a lot of time to move from exercise to exercise. Then they get 65 seconds of rest. Now, during this time, they're going to need to go grab a kettlebell. So they need to not just rest and go get their drinks, but get their kettlebell, then get their drinks. If they go get their drinks and recover and all that stuff, by the time they get back on that floor and get their kettlebell, it's going to be too late. So have them get their kettlebell first, then if they need to get a drink, get their drink. Because they're going to be doing a kettlebell swing, and then they're going to go into a kettlebell squat. Now, they can go a lot heavier than they think they can. The swing is only 25 seconds. The kettlebell squat pulse is 35 seconds. And again, it's a pulse. So for new people, they can come all the way up. But for people that have been here and need a little bit more challenging, they're going to stay low. And again, they can go a lot heavier than they think they can. So their team is R171. Just remember, they stay in the same exercise for 5 rounds in a row. You're going to straighten those arms out, slight bend in that arm, just like a normal dumbbell pullover. However, now we're on a decline. Full range of motion, all the way down, and then back up, eye level. What this does, it keeps more engagement on your lats. So you have a better range of motion, and you're utilizing the weight better because you're in a decline position. So it keeps more constant tension on those lats. When you're done, chest, leg, roll yourself out. The double kettlebell step up. So on the double kettlebell step up, shoulders are down and back. So think about rolling your shoulders down and back. Proud chest. You're going to push through the heel of that front leg, and you're going to keep that chest up. What you don't want to see is you don't want to see this, where people tilt forward. That means they don't have enough strength in their leg, and they're using momentum to drive them through the exercise. So again, step straight up. Ideally, you do not want to bring that foot up and set it on the bench. So you're just coming up, back down. You can bend that back leg just a little bit so you can get to 90 degrees. Again, pressing through the heel, keeping that chest up. I would prefer to see people go heavier on the lower benches than even use the higher bench. The higher bench is going to put a lot more strain on that knee joint. Now, if they need to, or if they feel that they have to, that's okay, but the weight needs to be a little bit lower. For a new person, you do not need to use any weights at all. Just get them to step up. And for a brand new person that has an excessive amount of weight, get a step with no risers and just have them on the step and have them step up and back and step up and back, but have them concentrate on pushing through the heel and activating the glute. So starting to get their body to learn how to work on these exercises is important, but start them very, very easy. And then in time, you just keep adding risers, risers, risers until you can get them up to a bench like this. So that is the double kettlebell step up. Next is going to be the landmine row. Landmine row, you're going to be in the squatted position. You are going to keep your head up. You're going to look about 4 or 5 feet in front of you. Notice my shoulders are down. Now, they're not up here, they're down here, and I retract. I just pull back. All I'm doing is moving my arms. I am not, what you see a lot of people do, is this, or even better, just doing this number where they're kind of doing shrugs. It is there in a squatted position, you're bent over, and you're squeezing that lat muscle, keeping those shoulders drawn back. Again, if that's too much for somebody, you can have them do the bent over rows with the dumbbells, or if that's too hard on their back, they can do the supported and they can switch. First of all, to set this up, I want to make sure everybody understands that we have these are specifically for doing the leg curls. So all you're going to do is take this, flip it over, it comes down. You see this loop here. You're going to feed the handle through the loop, and then it goes up, and there's no way that that's coming off unless it breaks. So you are tight and secure. Now, notice these handles. This is where the heel goes. The bottom of the foot goes here. So heel here, your leg is going to extend out this way, bottom of the foot here, and the foot's going to be behind this strap. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to demonstrate how that works. So again, you're going to get down. I'm going to put my heel in. Notice how my foot is positioned. The back of my foot is against this strap. The bottom of my foot is actually against the handle itself, and the strap is in front of my shoe. Same thing with this one. Bring it up. Foot goes in just like that, and I just get into it like this. Now, the only reason we're doing this is because we can do it. We're going to stay here, so people aren't going to get out in between rounds. They're going to stay. And they're just going to stay here for the next. They're going to wait until their next to the next round. Now, option one. Notice my heel or my hips are on the ground, and I'm just curling back. For a beginner, this is more than enough, especially for somebody who's slightly overweight. Option two, butt comes up. Now, you need these at a decent height. You want them probably about a foot off the ground because you want to be able to get those hips high enough. Now, the lower I keep my hips, the easier it's going to be. The higher I keep my hips, the harder it's going to be. It transfers more load into my hamstrings. Now, you really want to challenge it. You're going to do one at a time. You're going to take all the load off of this leg and then all the load off of this leg. So you literally should see almost a little bit of a slack in the line and then come back, switch. So I'm having all the load on this leg, switch to where I have all the load on this leg. And again, I don't have to go fast on this one, and this is a lot harder than it seems. Believe me, you'll get one heck of a good hamstring workout there. Again, toes go through the strap. The back of your foot is on this bent part here. The bottom of the foot is where the handles are. To get out, you simply pull yourself out. Super simple. All right, the squat rubber band row, single arm squat rubber band row. So here, the key is to keep the shoulders down and back. You want the shoulders down and back. You do not want to disengage the lat. This would be disengage the lat. Notice how my shoulders come back, up forward. I want the shoulders down and back the entire time, so my lat is always engaged. I'm going to row back to about 90 degrees. Don't have to come back this far, just 90 degrees, keeping my chest or my shoulders and my hips square. This is going to really work my core, so I want to keep them square. Again, you move further back, it's going to make it harder. Shoulders down and back, proud chest, squatted so it takes off the pressure of the lower back. Again, back and down. Again, don't release. You don't want to release. You want to keep that constant tension on that lat. When you're done, walk forward. Do not let the members just let the rubber band go and fly into the wall or fly into other people's. You got to get the tension off, then they can set the rubber band down. And that is the rubber band, single arm rubber band squat row. So the kettlebell sumo squat from step. So this exercise, you want to be a little bit wider than shoulder width. So wide stance, chest stays up. You go to pick up the weight, drop the hips, keep the chest up, pick the weight up. Now, when you come down, it's the same concept. Hips stay back, chest stays up. So you don't want your hips to come forward. You don't want to be doing this right here. What I see a lot of is where people come down and those knees protrude out. Puts a lot of strain on those knee joints. And that's going to hurt your knees over time. Again, put it back into your hips. Put the load in your hips. By doing that, you got to keep the chest up and the load in your heels. I'm sorry, you're going to push through your heels, but your hips stay back. And push through the heels. That puts the load into your glutes and hamstrings, and that's where you want the load. You don't want the load in your quads. By coming over your knees, that's going to put all the load in your quads and very little into your glutes. Now, the reason we do the step is so you can get a little bit better range of motion. The most you need is one riser at all. For the most part, you probably don't need any risers at all because that will give everybody plenty of range of motion. But if you do need to add one riser, that would be the most you would want to add. For a beginner, if they've never worked out before, or if they haven't worked out in a long time, they don't need any weights on this particular exercise. Just by doing, again, keeping the hands out in front, and dropping their hips. Just by doing that, they will get sore enough. For a beginner, keep them limited range of motion in the very beginning, something like this, and then in time, increase the range of motion. And then once they get the range of motion and and that's not bothering them, as they're not getting too sore from that, then you can start adding load. But never add load to a beginner, especially on any of these on this particular exercise, because it can make them too sore. But there is the kettlebell sumo squat from the step. All right, the kettlebell swing. The key on the kettlebell swing is to try to keep the chest up. You're going to have that chest fall a little bit, but you're really primarily functioning on a hip swing. So it is a swing, a hip thrust. The thing about this exercise is you work the entire body. You're working your upper body, your lower body, you work everything. But the primary function here is a hip thrust. That's where you're getting the power from. You still have to engage the back and the shoulders and all that. But what you don't want is you don't want to turn it into a shoulder lift, which is what you see a lot of. That's why this kettlebell needs to be straight out. If it's not straight out, if you see something where it's hanging down, that means they're not swinging it, they are lifting it. Okay, so you want it to come straight out. Again, it should just be able to float there. You shouldn't hit yourself in the butt, but it needs to swing back because it is a kettlebell swing. And again, you don't want to have this where you're using nothing but lower back, but you want to use your hips. So you do come down a little bit, you do fall forward a little bit, trying to keep the chest up, but fall forward a little bit and really thrust up, because that's where you're getting your power from, and that's what creates the swing. Now for a beginner or for somebody who has lower back issues, you can simply do a squat pulse, you can do high knees, you can do anything that's going to get their heart rate up. If that bothers their lower back. Obviously for a beginner, start them light. Work on their form. Use the small little 7.5 pound kettlebells. Start with that weight. Really just work on their form, getting in that swing motion, because a lot of people have a problem with that. They end up just kind of raising it, but work on getting them in the swing motion first, then start increasing their load. And for your more advanced people, again, as long as it doesn't bother the lower back, you can go really heavy on the kettlebell swing, and that makes the intensity go up significantly. But again, on cardio days, you don't want to go up too high. You got to be careful about that. We want to make sure that we're getting a good cardio workout, but we're not straining the body too much, because that turns into more resistance workout. So their team is the kettlebell swing. So the kettlebell sumo squat from step. So this exercise, you want to be a little bit wider than shoulder width. So a wide stance, chest stays up. You go to pick up the weight, drop the hips, keep the chest up, pick the weight up. Now, when you come down, it's the same concept. Hips stay back, chest stays up. So you don't want your hips to come forward. You don't want to be doing this right here. What I see a lot of is where people come down and those knees protrude out. Puts a lot of strain on those knee joints, and that's going to hurt your knees over time. Again, put it back into your hips. Put the load into your hips. By doing that, you got to keep the chest up and the load and your heels. You're going to push through your heels, but your hips stay back. And push through the heels. That puts the load into your glutes and hamstrings, and that's where you want the load. You don't want the load in your quads. By coming over your knees, that's going to put all the load in your quads and very little into your glutes. Now, the reason we do the step is so you can get a little bit better range of motion. The most you need is one riser at all. For the most part, you probably don't need any risers at all, because that will give everybody plenty of range of motion. But if you do need to add one riser, that would be the most you would want to add. For a beginner, if they've never worked out before, or if they haven't worked out in a long time, they don't need any weights on this particular exercise. Just by doing, again, keeping the hands out in front, and dropping their hips. Just by doing that, they will get sore enough. For a beginner, keep them limited range of motion in the very beginning, something like this, and then in time, increase the range of motion. And then once they get the range of motion and and that's not bothering them, as they're not getting too sore from that, then you can start adding load. But never add load to a beginner, especially on any of these on this particular exercise, because it can make them too sore. But there is the kettlebell sumo squat from the step.